My name is Diogo, for the ones that arrived after I mentioned. I'm from Brazil. I'm from the south of Brazil, from a city called Florianopolis. But right now I'm in between Eindhoven and Matera in South Italy. I came to Europe to do my master's in social design at the Design Academy, which I started and I did a year and a half, and then I dropped because of this project. I dropped. I might eventually go back to finish. I don't know, but this seems to be the focus right now. I joined an open call last year for the first workshop of the Open Design School, and this is how I got involved to it. Yeah. The Open Design School is a project that is happening in Matera 2019. Matera, for the ones that don't know, it's a little city in the south of Italy, in an area that it's somewhat forgotten. And I have an Italian next to me, so you can help me out if I say anything wrong or if I'm not polite.
Don't worry.
Okay, it's in a state or in a region called Basilicata, right next, which I don't know, most of you probably have never heard of it, but it's right next to a region called Puglia, which is then a lot more famous. Yeah, Basilicata, for the ones that don't know, also like it was considered to be such a region, such a like faraway region that people were sent in exile to live in that part of the country if they were against the government, you know, for a specific period. And for a long time, it was just the people from there felt that they were forgotten. And then the city applied to be the capital of the European Cultural Capital for 2019. And then exactly 3 years ago, it was actually chosen to be the capital. And this completely transformed the city. This brought the whole people from the city together, and they decided that this was the moment for the city to open up for the future and to open up to the rest of the world. Yeah. And then this is also the reason why Open Future was chosen as the main subject, as the main topic for the candidacy, for the approach, for how they would carry this the structure and the construction of the whole year of events. Yeah, and then in the two main projects of the candidacy were the Institute of Demo Ethno-Anthropological Archive, also known as IDEA, and the Open Design School. So the institute is a way to try to map what Annelise was talking yesterday, to try to map the subjective atlas of Matera and of the region of Basilicata. A way to try to archive all the history of the region. Matera is one of the oldest cities in Europe. It's about 10,000 years old. And you have traces of this history everywhere in the city. You know, the main historical part of the city, it's called Sassi. It's and all of the houses were excavated on the rock, on the tufo, on a sandstone kind of rock. And then this is the reason why I'm involved. I'm involved in the project of the Open Design School. The Open Design School is an approach that they consider for the candidacies. Like when you have a cultural capital, you normally have to buy and rent a lot of structure, you know, to have all the cultural events happening in the city. So you have to, you know, all the infrastructure to have all these people, all these events, all the lighting, all the stages, all the signs, you know, everything that goes on to the city. You normally buy and then you don't do anything with it after, you know, or you rent. It's like a money spent that is just for that event. And then they thought that, hey, what if instead of buying it, you know, like we start a school to actually design and build and try out different structures that we could do it ourselves. So while designing, we could have a school to try to involve a lot of people within this project, so that in the end we construct 2019 for Matera. And this is the main, you know, the base structure of the idea of the Open Design School. The Open Design School, it's not actually a school. It's it doesn't give grades, it doesn't give diplomas. There's nothing like that structure. If we would compare, and I don't like to do that, but that is just for a way of trying to explain the idea. It works more as like a studio, a design studio, than a school. So like you have all the necessities of the city that are brought up to the school, and then the school would come out with an alternative, with a possible solution for that situation. And then to start all this, we started with the first workshop last year. The first workshop happened from 1st of September to 21st of October of last year, about 7 weeks. And it had two main goals. One was to develop the concept of a performance space inside an old quarry, a quarry in which people used to remove the rocks and transport to the city to build the houses outside the excavated areas. So you have the positive and the negative in Matera. You have the areas that are excavated, and you also have the areas that are built upon bricks, rock bricks, that are built outside the caves. And the second goal was to start to contribute to the beginning of the concept of what a school is. What the planning or like how would we organize the school inside? How would we start thinking about how we would relate to the city? Like how we would start to think about this idea. And this is the project that I'm going to try to focus this presentation on. I know this is a discussion, about education and whatnot. I'm also a student, or I was, and I am still a student at the Design Academy. So please, if you need to interrupt or if you want to make questions, do so. Also about the Design Academy or the Open Design School, I'm here to have a dialogue. Yeah, not to be the clean monologue. So the first workshop premises started with a couple of defined principles, premises. One and the main is learn by doing. So the research that you would do while making stuff, like taking your time to prototype, taking your time to learn the material, taking your time to explore things. Second is the interdisciplinary and multicultural approach. So trying to get as many people from different backgrounds together. We know that this is a fertile situation for you to try to come up with different situations, cross-reference among different fields, produce new meaning, new ideas. The sharing of knowledge as the core of the program. So all of the background that you have, we try to ask the participants to share that knowledge as well through mini presentations, through whenever a situation came that he was, like you were going to try a specific technique, then we tried to stop and to try to get as many people together to see that happen, So like it's the process was the day-to-day was focused on trying to share all these experiences. The horizontality, the idea that everybody is a teacher and everybody is a student as well. A collaborative local and European network, the idea that the local knowledge is as important as what you're bringing from outside. So being open, meaning being open to this two-way route. And the communication of process, again, the idea that we wanted to be open to what we were doing and what we were trying to do, trying to communicate with the community, what was happening inside the school. And for that, we were trying a lot of different approaches. One was in the beginning of the workshop, we set up that the workshop would be comprised of 1/3 from people from Matera, local people from there, born and live there, not just living there at that moment, because a lot of Italians and a lot of people moved to Matera in the past years to try to join this bandwagon of the cultural capital. 1/3 Italians, so you have people from other regions of Italy that could also bring a different perspective, and 1/3 foreigners, mainly Europeans. So by that we try to have like a 3-layer perspective into one thing, like having a super local, having an idea of a national identity and a national approach, but also what does that represent in a bigger sphere. And this was very important, like this gave always different perspective in different situations. And we also had a base structure of a couple of things. One is open library, is the idea that we try to ask the participants and people that were coming in and out of the school to bring materials, you know, like just to drop it there. So we would have like a big shelf that people could just come and leave their books. Write down your name, who owns it, you know, and leave it there for the period of the workshop. So in the end, we had a big shelf full of really interesting stuff that I've never seen before. Things are relating to music, to preservation, how do you call, like art, restoration, to Arduino, to architecture, to participation, collaborative processes, to all sorts of things. Another was an open lab, having a workshop, a laboratory that could be used by anybody. I mean, by anybody is like, yeah, any student, you know, that from the local schools that would be interested to come in and working with us, they could also use the machines. Of course, through under supervision, but they would be able to do so. Open kitchen, meaning that again, like the most there's a saying that the most interesting ideas do not happen in the studio, but happen when you are on a table. You know, when you have food around, especially in Italy, when about half of the topics of the conversation are about food, of what you're gonna have or what you just had. You know. Then this was really interesting because also like you could share these ideas of how to cook in something in a specific way, and then you have those three spheres. You know, you have the Matera and the people from Matera, you have the people from Italy. So how you cook pasta in the north is completely different than in the south. You know, the quantity of oil, like we were talking about, me and Pablo yesterday. You know, like there's this different approaches, and also again, like the pasta in Brazil is completely different. We eat completely different than you do in Italy. So this also came out to why you would do it a specific way. So the arguments, you're always trying to improve your arguments, you know, even if it's just about pasta. And an open studio, meaning that
Just about pasta, be careful with what you
yeah.
say. This is the big
No, I think it's the presence of the 1/3 of foreigners that makes this kind of conversation.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's a
Yeah.
I forgive you.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, I do need to be careful. True. Another one was the open studio, an idea that's like we would always have open doors. Yeah, of course you don't want people coming in and out and disturbing some sort of like line of thoughts or some sort of narrative that you're having on a workshop or on a specific task that you're doing. But we try to have like 3 blocks of spaces per week. So if I'm not wrong, like Tuesdays and Wednesdays afternoons were open for whoever wanted to come and to join the conversation and to join the development of the idea. And especially on Fridays we had the open presentation. So every Friday we would the participants had to set up a presentation, like to present what they did during the week. So not just for us, but for people that would come, that were invited to come and to check that out. And this was very interesting because they needed to every week try to reflect on their argument, you know, and try to enforce what they are doing. And they were being questioned by people that were not related to the process. So this also meant that what they are doing was also needed to be questioned. Even if it was a simple question that they answered 2 weeks ago, if the argument was there and it was kept, it meant it was getting reinforced, you know. So it was interesting that they needed to do this in a routine basis, you know. So every Friday we had that for 7 weeks. Another thing we had was the open talks. Sorry by the ubiquitous use of the word open, but it was important in the process there. It's also because the subject or the approach of the 2019 is open future. So the use of open, it's part of your mentality, it's part of the narrative overall in the community. So it's interesting that we kept using it. Yeah, it might sound a bit sometimes a bit annoying, but we had the open talks, which were every week. We invited people from all over the world, like interesting people that from the network of the participants, to come and talk about their practice. In this case, you're seeing Guan Li to talk about 3D printing, to talk about ceramics and the project he has in England. And these events were open to the public. We had flyers running all. Then these situations we enforce the communication to try to invite, because being open doesn't mean like, oh, you have your doors open, meaning that then the community will understand and will know that something is happening. The communication of it also enforces how open you are. So in the open talks, we try to enforce this by having flyers, by running some calls through radio, or like talking to people around that are important, like people from church, from the church, from communities and whatnot, to try to invite people to come. And this was very, very productive in the end. Another thing we tried to do within the 7 weeks was trying to connect the Sassi, the old town, to the rest of the city, because there is a bit of a disconnection there. And then what we tried to do is we tried to map specific situations and places where we could communicate with the rest of the city. So this is just an example of what we did. It's like we tried to talk. We interviewed a bunch of people in different neighborhoods to try to understand what was their point of view, what they thought about the whole thing, about 2019, about the project, and what was lacking, what they thought was not being represented, like all these feelings and this subjective interaction, we tried to map. Again, the whole idea of subjective atlas, it was the principle of it. We also used the tools, the mapping the commons, like there's a platform that you try to do. We also try to use that to improve upon something that is already there. This is the principle. Also, one of the principles of open design is try to use something that is already there and try to evolve upon. So this was also something that we were always questioning ourselves, whether we should start something or we should pick something that is already there and try to use it and try to also give feedback to that situation, to that tool. And then within the workshop, the big workshop was 7 weeks, and the knowledge of all the participants, we tried to do mini workshops within the community. And then we came out with this idea of doing a triangulation. So we always invited people from local schools and universities to connect with the Open Design School and to connect to local businesses and suppliers. So by doing so, we felt that the Open Design School could also be a tool of promoting bridges, bridges within the city that are not there anymore. So not that we were the ones that were going to do the project, but by having small workshops and small interactions, we could just promote that specific link. And that was super effective, It's after the workshop, there are a lot of things that were happening with the schools and specific suppliers that kept on going even after we were out. So just by connecting them, that spark was there. And then the mini workshop, as I mentioned, were 5. One in mental mapping, the idea also to try to map this subjective consciousness of local students. Reciprocal lamps, what's like using discarded materials to create lighting fixtures. Autocostruzione, which is based on Enzo Mari's approach to try to build your own furniture, and we did that with the students. Arduino, we had a very interesting sound artist with us that was very keen and super good in Arduino, and he just started like teaching the kids the basics of using Arduino. And visual identity was something that we came up that we felt the need to start thinking about what the visual identity of the school would be. So we also invited a bunch of local students from universities, graphic design, and also other fields, to join us, along with Mauro Bubico, which is a very known graphic designer in Italy, and he's very how do I say that? He's very concerned about local history and local identity, and he uses that on his graphic design. So it was very nice to see students connecting with some people that they thought was like their like the mythical guy that they never met, and they were working with them right there on the same table. So that was very nice also to see. Uh, this graphic designer, Mauro Bubico. Yep. It's really nice if you want to check. Super cool guy. So this is so at the end of the workshop we had a exhibition to show the output of the workshop. We did a bunch of things, about 10 to 12 projects, and we showed inside what it's now being remodeled to be the premises of the school itself. So this is actually where one of the workshops for wood is going to be in a few weeks. So you have an idea. This is like a true excavated cave that we're going to have the workshops on. Another one, like a big cube in collaboration with a local manufacturer of sofas and chairs named Kalia. It's also somewhat known in the rest of Europe. So he provided with all this foam and all this material to try to rethink this identity of the sassi with all the all the plateaus and the stages and the configuration of the sassi. And then out of this workshop, in the workshop we tried to always try to bring the projects to the open structure approach. I don't know if you guys know about the open structure. Yeah, most of you. So that again, like to try to use or try to base yourself upon a project that is already there, to try to build on top of, And the open structure is something that is very interesting, especially if you're going to design structure for exhibitions and stages and things like that. Open structures work really well for that, and we try to promote that things that we're going to create to try to fit within that frame of structure, frame of thought. Out of that came this idea of the cube. The cube is it's a new reading of joint done by Japanese. Just these things to just fit in, but brought into the open structure approach. Out of this came this prototype, and then this prototype we evolved upon, and we did this stage for Atelier Clerici during the Fuori Salone, the Milan Design Week this past year, this past April. Out of that set of structures we kept recreating. This is the first conference for the idea, the other project for Matera 2018. With all the signs from Mauro Bubico to start thinking about this other project. So we reuse the same structure. And out of that, then now we come to the next stages. Now we're organizing ourselves to launch 2 open calls for the next weeks. Yeah? One will be a project to start actually designing the stage structures for Matera 2019. So we're going to invite architects, designers, we're going to invite roadies, like everybody that is involved within a stage we want to put together to try to rethink, to try to come up with new ideas for a stage system. Out of these stage structures, we're going to have a workshop on open structures again with Lukas Wegwerf, a German guy known for doing this kind of objects, of furniture. Another open call we're going to have is to map the places for 2019. So we go within the city and see which squares, which little corners could be used to present specific projects. Yeah, there will be more than 40 different cultural projects going on in 2019. So the Open Design School will be the one providing the structure for all these projects. So we also need to understand which places would be better to fit specific projects as well. And we want to do that for Matera, but we also want to keep an eye with projects that are going on all around the world. And for that, we are going to invite Tomás Saraceno to come to Matera to work with us in the aeroscene. I don't know if you guys know about this project. This is a project by him in which he designed these balloons that are self-propelled. So they're made out of this black plastic, black nylon, and then you have a structure within the website, how to sew, how to put them together so that they are black, and then you put in the sun and they create enough heat to bring them up, you know. So you don't need anything else but to construct in that specific way. And then you can carry up to 70 grams, I think, of material. And he tries to reinforce putting things that you could share within a specific database, you know, like specific network of information. So like to get the temperature, or to get the climate readings of Matera, or to get a camera going up, or to get, you know, all sorts of things. So that you share all this information within a bigger network of knowledge. So again, you know, we are looking into Matera, we're being very specific, but it's also important that we keep an eye outside, you know, to things that already happen and to be part of a bigger network. And that would be what we are doing right now, and I'm open to questions and feedback. Thank you. Thank you.
What is your role?
I'm one of the 2 coordinators to implement this Open Design School.
How many of you are there?
We are 3 right now. We have, 4. We have Joseph Grima as the artistic director. We have Rita Orlando, which is the project manager, let's put it that way. And then we have me and Marco Laterza as the 2 coordinators. I'm the one, the foreign one, and Marco is the local architect. So within the group, we also try to have different positions and different points of view.
And if we imagine, like, what kind of tasks do you do on a day-to-day?
Right now, we're trying to put the basic structure together. Marco, being local, he deals with the suppliers, and he tries to connect the local community. I'm focusing on trying to communicate the school outside, dealing with the communication of the putting the new website together. We should come up at the end of this week. Organizing, trying to organize the open call and try to get people involved with this project as well, among a lot of little things that you have to do.
And the open school, it's part of a huge program, I suppose.
Yes, it's
For
part of the
2009.
Fondazione Matera 2019, which is the one responsible to carry everything that's going to happen in 2018. Yes.
And the open school will continue during the 2019.
Yes, this is the idea.
Yeah.
The open school to move forward, even into to continue going after
After,
2020. Yeah, we of course we have a direct goal, which is 2019, but we're already thinking on the follow-up. So this is the importance of creating a good, solid, creating good connections so that they last.
Yeah.
Mm. We are not having enough time, to be fully honest with you, to think of what projects will be after, Not just that we don't have time, but we also leaving space for the unknown, like the idea that things will be created within as they go. And again, it's like, I think it's similar approach to what's happening here. Is like you lay your path as you step, so you're also creating on the go.
Like the path of walking.
Yeah.
It's Antonio Machado.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you need to be comfortable with not knowing what's going to happen. Yeah? This is something also like a bit contradictory to an approach to design in which you plan and you have everything.
No, but I think it's the most difficult moment where you have to organize and promote with politicians and etc. because you don't know the result.
Yes.
So, and you cannot manage many things which
Yes.
are usually managed in a political way.
Yes. I forgot I have some material that I brought. And this is actually super interesting. Is that we during the Milano Design Week this week we launched what is our what is our school manual. So we have a set of principles, like I think this answers, not answers, but continues what you're saying, is that not knowing what we're going to do next, it's important that you have a good set of principles, have a good set of approach to it. So here we have all these principles that we believe is connected to our school. And then we also tried to, we did a little bit of research on previous approaches to previous experiences like ours, to try also to learn from them, and this is a version 1, so we are improving on top of it. And I invite you guys, if you have something to add, please do so. All right, I'm gonna leave this with you guys if you want to take a look.
You were talking earlier about the language of design you are using, or you are asking to be used, because you are in Italy, where the language is in that part very isolated from other languages. How did you bring this on?
This is a daily struggle. The official language of the school is English, but again, English. I mean, like the community of Matera, not that many people speak English in a very elaborate way. In a way that they are able to argument the ideas and whatnot. During our workshop, we had a problem. Some of the local people could not defend their ideas in English, and we also had, to be very clear, we had besides the Italians, we had a Portuguese guy, another Brazilian, and a Polish girl. So the Brazilian and the Portuguese, they could understand Italian, and even the Brazilian could actually speak fluently Italian. So the Polish girl was the only one that could not understand. And at the end, they were always resorting to Italian because the Italians could not speak English. So what that ended up doing is completely isolating the Polish architect, and that was really sad, And then I was trying always to enforce using English, but how do you do so? You have to do it, and you have to try all the time. I think after the experience last year, we might try to. We might try to be more careful in checking if the person actually speaks in English, because the local participants were not checked or were not questioned whether they spoke English or not. And I believe, sorry?
Or the opposite.
Yeah.
I mean, why don't you check that the people that is animating the workshops speak Italian?
True. But
Because I think knowing that Matera it's part of the UNESCO heritage, so it should be a quite touristic and open city in itself, but it's not, because it's a very poor one. So we don't expect finding the young population or the population that might be involved in this kind of projects to be perfectly fluent in English. And I think this is something I'm very concerned when I work in Liège or in Serein and etc. I hardly we had the experience. I think we were all obliged to speak French in this kind of areas, but it's not. The objective is not that all these people from Matera will talk a fluent English in 10 years. The objectives are completely different. So I think it's a little bit what I think in this kind of experiences.
No, I understand what you're saying, and
you're immediately creating a top-down situation where you select the people that can be part of it by their level in the cultural level.
I agree. I agree. But I also understand that being a European capital of culture
Yeah.
and having a topic and an approach of
Yes,
the
yes.
open future,
Yes.
you know, like you do put yourself in a situation in which you want to connect to other people. Yeah, you want to
Yeah,
connect to
yeah.
the rest of Europe and to the
Yeah.
rest of the world.
But then maybe English courses. I mean, I'm not joking that much, but I think you have to combine this kind of services if you
No, that's true, and this is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. It's a daily struggle, you know, because this is an ongoing
Yeah.
discussion that we have.
Yeah, maybe it's a daily struggle for the other part as well. I mean, being obliged to speak in English or to understand in English. I mean, that's just
No,
a
this is a good-
counterpoint to.
This is a very important.
Because it's a quite common problem when you start to do social innovation researches in areas which are not very cultivated in the common sense, in the common way.
I think also this is one of the reasons why we try to have locals, Italians, and foreigners. Is
Yeah.
that by doing so you have different spheres of translation as well,
Yes,
you know.
yes.
So you also have the foreigners that are speaking English, you have the Italians, and you have the locals that are also speaking a local dialect,
Yes,
which
of course.
changes in a few kilometers in
Yeah.
Italy.
Yeah.
So by doing so, it's also a daily negotiation, you know, on how to communicate yourself
Yes.
better.
Yes.
I
It's
completely.
just not to under-evaluate in this kind of projects, which are more and more frequent, luckily. But the language is not a secondary problem.
No.
And of course, English it's an important language, but sometimes we wonder why English and not the Basilicata dialect, for instance,
Yeah,
Or developing a new one. I think that's
or
that's
developing a new one.
I think that as Giovanna says, it sounds like a very pragmatic issue, but it's not, and it's
It's
also
not.
especially if you're talking about culture, because I mean, it's not really about design; it's much more about culture, and it's more about like how to kind of make these things emerge from what's going on already there, and like make this kind of culture also Basilicata emerge, or also maybe combined or integrated, or I don't know how it kind of articulates with other kind of cultures coming
Yeah.
there.
true.
So it could be things like yesterday Jeroen was telling me that in Amsterdam they have this initiative called the Temporary Museum, something like that. And was telling me how they were developing, they had developed a language between the different cultures that they were there that nobody could understand, but it was like a kind of combination of all their languages. So at the beginning nobody understood it, but they all had the same kind of level of understanding of that language. Also, like the calligraphy that yesterday wrote was speaking. It's not maybe not necessarily about understanding, but is making it a project. Or if you consider like here close to Hasselt, there is Henk, where they have like a kind of dialect called the Siteta, and it's like the kind of dialect of the influence that all the different cultures, the Turkish, Moroccan, Italian, have made it there. So I think if that is seen also as part of the kind of the project, that could give some very interesting insights also in the way of working. So it stops becoming this kind of instrumental thing and becomes an element also to design, but also like a resource to build further.
Yeah, like yesterday, Jeroen was talking about a project in which, or an exhibition, I don't know what was that exactly, that you would go in, but you were not allowed to speak. You know, like what if that could be a possibility that you suppress by default, like the language, you know, and you need to communicate yourself through drawings or through making, through prototypes or through things, you know, like this could be absolutely. That the open design, like our approach is like to try to do, you know, to research or we are open to trying these possibilities.
It was not a critic. It was just to not to forget in this kind of debates that language, your yellow is not my yellow. I mean, it's part of the culture. So I don't want to say that everybody has to learn Italian or the dialect, but try to work on that as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
I mean, and it's as much as
Yeah, I just became super conscious not to how do I forgot the word, like that what happened to the Polish architect last year, really
Yes.
touched me. That was really
Yes,
something
yes.
that bothered me,
Yes.
because she was completely left out to the conversation,
Yeah.
and I don't want that to happen. So we need to figure a way that everybody feels they are engaged, they are part of. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we are in a sector, in a practice where the making is very important, and by making you don't need necessarily to talk. I think it's a moment where you can, when you make together, you don't really need to talk. It's really yeah,
Yeah.
it's a language. It's a language in itself. So speaking.
It's more about time, because communication thing is something important in the project, especially when it's collaborative. But anyway, there are gonna be so many ways that we can understand and communicate, but it takes time. 'Cause
Yes.
language is more about efficiency, but if you want to collaborate with people from everywhere, if you have a passion, then we can just try to understand.
Yeah,
Just it
probably.
takes time. We can just set the project in a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But just to add, like also as a personal experience, like in the design academy, when I arrived there, I was used to talk about the project. Try to talk about your concept, or to talk about what you're trying to do or to approach. But there, like, you always have to have something on the table. Either if it's an object or a drawing or something. If you don't have it, that's a big problem. And I understood that because it makes something so much easier. Like if everybody is looking in around something, like that thing is what you're talking about, so everybody can relate to. It's much easier. So perhaps like it's in between as well, that
Exactly.
we should try to have as much as possible objects and things that you work on, and people understand how hard it is to get there, or can relate to, and then we try to find how we can communicate there around, that
Yeah, but this is also something that comes that can be perfected, or can be whatever that might mean, perfected, but that can be kind of fine-tuned through time as well. I mean, I really appreciate that what you say in terms of that we should perhaps stop thinking that we have to understand each other now and come to a kind of an agreement. Maybe not. Maybe it's just we have to bring our ideas, even if they don't kind of come together because there's not a common language. But then eventually, like, they will kind of make some sense, or they will kind of contradict each other. I don't know. But even that language that you're speaking, that some people could argue the language of design. For me, that's not necessarily the case, but that kind of language is also like something that is not taken for granted. I think you cannot define, like, okay, you have to make what kind of object. Then we're talking also about different kind of languages. You're talking to like graphic design,
True.
industrial design, somebody that manifests in a more embodied way, or in a more graphic way, or more.
Yeah, I was thinking yesterday that like it's easy for us to say when we say, oh, it's multicultural, like there is a variety of background, but all of the people we had at the workshop last year were related to the creative field, So when we start bringing actually like people that are completely unrelated, like, or not unrelated, but that speak a different language, or
Yes.
speak a different set of signs, I don't know, from engineer, or from like stage roadies, people that are talk in a different way. Like if you bring into the table, rather if your communication is also going to change. So this is something we haven't done yet. So we need to try, like we need to propose that, to see what are the effects of it as well.
Can you tell us more about your mapping work? I find this very interesting. Was it a vector of social links? And were locals surprised about what results of this work?
First question, you mean the techniques in which we use? In the first workshop was just two guys walking around and then interviewing people. and then geolocating where that interview happened, and then trying to after do a path of it, you know. The next workshop will be about actually mapping, like getting on, you know, like getting on a map and locating specific situations and how it relates the contour to the context and whatnot. And then that I cannot speak more, because through the workshop will come different techniques in different ways. The last workshop we did by interviewing people, and they were surprised that we were actually doing something, especially about the quarry, the cava, which is like which is named Cava del Sole, which is in the entrance of the city, and it has been forgotten for I don't know, for so many years, you know, for 100 years. It's being used right now as a concert venue, but they just put a lot of rubbish to try to make the terrain a bit inclined, a bit in elevation, and then they put plastic grass to cover, and they put normal seats on top. So it completely out of context, you know, and it looks super strange to have that. It works as a concert space, you know, because they used a couple times during the summer, but it's completely disconnected, and the population feel it is disconnected. Yeah, and then there is also like a route which is called Cava Monti, which is the route that from this cava that they used to do. The guys used to take on their back or through donkeys and stuff to carry the rock all the way through the Sassi, and this has been closed, you know. So we also tried to map this back again to see if this could be used as a way to integrate the city with this entrance of the city to this cava, to this quarry complex. So it's also trying to bring things that are already there, but it's forgotten, you know. So Matera also has a problem of relating to, because it's right on a canyon, you know, on the river. It's called the Gravina, and then there is one passage that goes down the canyon, and then they built a suspended bridge to cross the river in 5 years ago, if I'm not wrong. And then this is how they actually open up for the tourists to go through and to go through the park on the other side. But then the past summer there was a lot of rain, and then part of the construction started falling from where the stairs are, and they completely closed. So there's no way whatsoever for you to go down to the canyon from the Sassi, and you're right there, you know, like there is a road, a passageway, where you see the canyon right in front of you, but there's no relationship. Like you cannot go there. And I every week, like I see tourists walking on their hiking boots, and like, how do we get down? How do we get down? I'm like, sorry, I need to go out of the city and around to go to the entrance of the park to be able to cross the canyon, you know. So like there are some things that need to be also changed. The relationship with the space, with the area.
Sort of psychogeography.
Pardon?
That's kind of sort of psychogeography.
Yeah.
I wonder, like, to which extent do you want to drag the project? How much you're expecting?
How much of expecting of what?
I mean, like, to which extent you want to drag the project? Because you know,
Yeah, sorry.
I wonder, like, to which extent you want to drag the city mapping project? Because you know, you're talking about like discovering all the places with the people, but you know, there are full of people from different backgrounds, so maybe mapping can be expressed, you know, visually, like, you know, graphically, or can be recorded with the videography. So I wonder, like, how you want to drag the city mapping project.
I don't know. If I would answer that to you, I would have the result already. You know, I think the project is to come up with something that is interesting. Yeah. I think there is one goal, which is like to map the places in which could be used for the projects, for the cultural projects that will happen 2019. You know, so there is a list on the bid book. There is a list of projects that will happen. So the foundation it was set up to make the bid book into reality. You know, so all the projects, everything that have been listed on the bid book, need to happen. So the foundation is the one that need to make this happen. So we have all these projects, and they will have to have places. They will have to have structure to happen. So this is the main. There's an actual goal, an actual thing we need to solve. But in the meantime, as does with open design, there could be a lot of forking through different projects and to different ideas that we might pursue, or we might archive, so that perhaps in another moment somebody can come and go and continue on that.
It's gonna be more like you're just drawing the issues and think, and the project that we're gonna do, and then you will see like what's going to happen and how it's going to be.
We will see it happening. Yes, every cultural project. So, for example, there's a project that we're gonna happen right now next week, which is a game that happens all throughout the city. So we do need to map which places could be used for this game and what do they need for that to happen. So this is very practical, and the Open Design School is the one that will provide this structure. Does that answer your question? Okay.